to, well, what a week this has been, and it's time to square off. Let's first meet this week's panel.
I'm Barry Gogel.
I'm Pastor Shannon, Wright.
I'm Jovani Patterson.
And I'm Chris Kennedy.
And I'm Richard Sher. Let's get right to it. With President Trump saying the country has put the Epstein files in the rearview mirror, First Lady Melania Trump is now in the driver's seat, telling the White House press corps that she has no ties to Jeffrey Epstein or any knowledge of his sex crimes, saying, quote, stories are completely false, calling accusations that she was somehow involved smears about me. End of quote. Chris Kennedy, why don't you kick it off? What do you think about what happened?
Well, as I understand it, until yesterday, she had actually not gone on the record to deny involvement with the Epstein matters. And I think that, coupled with an email that she had sent to Maxwell that was published, generated some questions from the media to her staff that led them, I think, to wisely come out and get in front of the story and deny any involvement. And I thought the most brilliant part of what her staff came up with was to recommend these hearings for the victims for two reasons. One, because I think Melania knows it's the right thing to do. And two, it takes her out of the category of being a potential perpetrator and putting her in the category of being aligned with the victims. So I think that's what it was all about. I'm pleased to see that the First Lady came out and pushed for those hearings. And I would hope that Oversight Committee Chairman Comer schedules those hearings as soon as possible.
Shannon, what are your thoughts?
I think it's all a hot ball of mess. I understand that President Trump is saying, this is all in the rearview mirror, but then as husband and wife, I would think they could be somewhere in the same book or chapter. The only thing I can say is perhaps she is saying this because it's in the rearview mirror, and this is to close it off of them and really give the victims a voice. I'm not really sure what to make of that.
What do you make of it, Barry Gogel?
Well, it raises lots of questions in my mind. In my profession, the number one rule in crisis management is don't call attention to the crisis unless you think attention is coming, and then get out in front of it. So I do wonder what's coming. I also wonder whether I was the only one who was eerily reminded of Bill Clinton's statements about Monica Lewinsky when I listened to Melania. She sounded very defensive, and I was curious about some inconsistencies. She said she did not meet Epstein until 2000, but that's the same time frame that Trump said he was disassociating from Epstein. So how did they spend so much time in these circles that she talked about in New York and Palm Beach? And, what's happening in these circles? I dare say that MAGA supporters would not approve if they knew what was happening in these circles. It's the same quote unquote circles that they railed against with the Clintons, I think, who also apparently were in those circles. So raises so many questions.
Our square off circles are the best. You will all admit that. We have a great time, and we have had for 42 years, Barry. Jovani, good day. What do you think?
What's up? So I think in response to Mr. Barry here, it's important to note that these circles were Democrat because Trump was the Democrat back then.
I don't know.
So let's let's start there. But also it's kind of showing that one point is that for whatever reason the public has this view that it becomes God and it could be judge and jury of the past, as if we all had a crystal ball and know what was going on in someone's personal life at all times, right? I mean, you got friends right now. Like, I'll put it like this. I'll put it in my personal experience.
Go ahead.
I've had customers that I've worked with in the state agencies and two government customers, and the people that I worked with, they were later. I found out like they were sex offenders. I didn't know anything and I sold to them. I sold cybersecurity equipment to them. I don't know anything about their personal life. So we try to say we have these crystal balls and can look through everyone's life. But the other angle to this is I do think calling for this hearing does resurface these Epstein files, because if you notice, they've been getting quiet because there's a lot of Democrats that were involved in this. So you hear, Melania Trump, saying, "Hey, let's call for some hearings," because I think, who's been pushing this? Mainstream media. Who's been pushing it? The Democrats, and trying to get Trump. And now Melania said, "Hey, let's why not let's continue to look at this. Why not let's look at this." So I think this is more of a chess move than anything else.
I
Well,
think the next move on the chessboard may be, will Melania and Donald Trump themselves testify at these hearings? Because after all, the hearings that have gone so far have called people in, and it'll be very interesting to see. Will she put her seat where her mouth is?
Well, I mean, I hope they do, and
I
I'm
do
right there.
too.
I'm right there with you, Barry. I mean, I hope
Yeah.
they do, because I mean, if you look through even the Epstein files, where Trump called the police, the Fort not Fort Lauderdale, but Palm Beach police, and say, "I'm glad you got this guy. I'm glad you." So there's been evidence of him, trying to get Epstein off the radar.
can you imagine if during all of this, one of these young ladies, young women, mentions that Donald Trump was involved in one of these assaults? It's just hypothetical, but what do you think that would do to it, Chris?
Well, I think that would take it to a whole new level. I think if that were true, I think such a person or such people are terrified about coming out and saying that, seeing the ability of this man to reach back and get retribution. I think whoever was involved, regardless of their party, needs to be pointed out, investigated, and if necessary, held accountable. Personally, I think anyone who attacks or preys on women, particularly underage girls, I do believe there's a special place in hell to deal with such despicable people. And I do believe the truth needs to come out. The files, as the law indicates, need to be published. And we need to, as a lot of prosecutors say, follow the facts where they lead.
So
She
I
said,
want to ask the question to the panel: what has happened to the lady that did come out against Trump, and what did Trump do when it was later determined that she lied?
come on, we have some attorneys here. Barry, Chris?
I'm not sure. I know that there was some questions that somebody did make a report to the FBI, and that FBI document has surfaced. I don't know that that individual person was even identified, or that there was a statement of this years ago event happened, that document being connected to anybody. So that you're telling me things I haven't heard.
So
Richard,
Melania, go ahead.
I think if, and again, I don't want to hold myself out as a criminal lawyer because I'm not. But from what I understood, there's some sort of 301 or 302 file that's part of a Justice Department criminal investigation. And people put two and two together to try to extrapolate different things. And they identified a young woman and realized that that 301 or 302 file pertaining to her mysteriously had vanished and was not part of all the other files that were there. And it raised a red flag. And somehow other people got some references to redacted portions of the files that seemed to talk about her and having some involvement with Trump on one particular time, I believe down at the island, but it was never investigated further. Whatever that is, it needs to be looked into further, along with everything else that involves
Mhm.
horrible people doing horrible things to women, and particularly underage women.
All right, we're going to pause and move on in a moment. We'll have to see if Congress will in fact hold a public hearing centered on survivors of Epstein's crimes with a chance, as Melania said, quote, to testify before lawmakers and have their stories entered into the congressional record. We're going to move on to the war in just a moment, but first, do want to mention that the voice of Square Off, Howard Mallison, is under the weather today, so I will be taking over his position, although so much inferior to his. All right, you'll find that Baltimore's best crab cakes and much more available at Pappas restaurants and sports bars, locations in Parkville, Cockeysville, Glen Burnie, and Bel Air, and of course, it's my friend Oprah's favorites. The insurance companies cannot tell you where to take your car. So if you have a wreck, you get dented, you should definitely trust Leading Edge Auto Body and Mechanic. They're great. Our cars are always there. It's on Falls Road, 5807 Falls Road, and the phone number is 410-433-6433. Or you can visit them at 5807 Falls Road in Mount Washington. Then there's the law firm of Barry Glazer, who's your advocate for personal injury. He's not in it for the money. He's in it for the money for you. That's right. He has great records, excellent cases and settlements. Excuse me just a moment, please. Barry Glazer gets top dollar from the insurance companies for his clients. His number is 410-457-8568. And board-certified podiatrist Dr. Kelly Gagan offers laser treatments for unsightly toenails. And if you've seen Barry Gogel's toenails, you know what I mean. Call Dr. Gagan, 410-753-4422 for an appointment. I don't know what's happening.
Do I really need to show you my feet?
No.
My feet are clean. If I had a problem, I would go to Dr. Kagan, but I've never had that need. And now I'm offended.
Gagan. For breakfast, lunch, and dinner, it's the Double T Diners. TT, totally terrific. Great food, so many choices. And let's move on now. Here it is. The ceasefire between the United States and Iran, technically still in effect. Excuse me. President Trump threatens Iran as a dispute over Israel's war, and Lebanon casts doubt on the continuation of the ceasefire. Let's start from Jovani, and I'll take care of this. Go ahead, Jovani.
Hold on. What was the question? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear it.
Just update on the war. What do you think's going on out there?
Well, I'm hoping we're coming to a close, but it's important to note that Iran has never been one to follow the law or follow through. So I'm hoping it's coming to a close. This is a place that wants to see, they're chanting death to America. And they practice this on their own citizens. I mean, I think there was a number, 20,000 that were murdered in blood in their own streets of their own citizens.
Right.
So I think these are people that, you have to take serious. And my family and I, we were watching a show not too long ago, it was David on Netflix. And there was Saul was telling his children or his daughters, like, why do we go to war? Why do we have to go to because no one really likes war, right? And the analogy he gave was so brilliant. Is because there's always lions at the gate. There's lions and wolves and lions at the door, wanting to attack you. So you have to make sure you're ready and prepared, to go after them when necessary. And I'm hoping we can get a deal done here, but at the same time, these people do not like us. And they're screaming death to America, death to Israel, all these things. And, you can't just let that happen.
Well, Trump's threat to destroy the Iranian civilization is seen by many as a war crime. Both the United States and Iran claim the 2-week truce is a victory for their side. So, somebody speak up.
Well, I wonder what we've accomplished. other than raising the price of gas to over $4 a gallon and emboldening the Iranian leadership. They've now learned that they can control the world by controlling the Straits of Hormuz, which is a lesson that we have to figure out. Spot oil today is at $145 a gallon because despite the ceasefire, there's still a crunch at the Strait.
You mean a barrel? You mean a barrel, not a
Barrel.
gallon.
A barrel, thank you. Yeah, a barrel, thank you. And there are reports this morning that the ceasefire is in trouble over Lebanon. I agree with you, Jovani, that the Iranian government, the people in charge right now, hate America, and they don't hate them any less now that we've bombed them. Unfortunately, there are lots of Iranians that want Iran to change, and they, as you said, 20,000 of them were killed, but there's a lot more that follow them. And we had Iran in January where we wanted them, with the people rising up against this country, this leadership, and all we've done is embolden the leadership. And I wonder if those same Iranians who were in favor of the United States have a different view now that we've bombed them.
All right, Chris, go ahead.
So, Richard, this is not a new thing, the Strait of Hormuz. Iran attacked shipping back in the 1980s, including ships with our flags during the Iran-Iraq War. And you would think we had learned enough from that so that when last June we bombed the nuclear facilities of their country and did what we did, that we would not have done what Donald Trump did 3 months later in September, which was to decommission half the minesweeper vessels in the United States Navy. That's what he did 3 months after bombing Iran, knowing that the Strait of Hormuz is a choke point that they've used before and now would be more motivated to use against us after being bombed. There are only 4 minesweepers that are functioning in our Navy right now, and they all need to stay in Japan to protect Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines. So we have no minesweepers there to be able to do something about the Strait of Hormuz with our vessels. And we don't have enough destroyers and frigates there, along with minesweepers, to try to do escort service. But one last thing.
Go ahead.
The first thing out of JD Vance's mouth tomorrow, in my opinion, needs to be Karg Island, because that is where 90% of the Iranian oil gets exported off their coast. It accounts for 70% of their economy, and he needs to threaten to shut down the transfer of oil on that island. And there's 2 ways you can do it without harming the oil. One is to do a cyber attack, which I'm sure Jovani could talk about, and 2 is to do a limited strike on not the oil tanks where the oil is or the ships, but the equipment connecting the two, the oil piping that connects the two. You can strike that and disable their entire economy. And that needs to be the choke point, the ace in the hole that Vance talks about tomorrow when he gets rid of this ridiculous 10-point plan that they've proposed.
Well, let's say that my frog is leaving. I couldn't compete with Howard, and that's why we'll be glad to welcome him back next week. Shannon Wright, and then Jovani, because his name was mentioned. But Shannon, we haven't heard from you in a while. Go ahead.
So, with regards to things going on in Iran, I found it interesting that we were watching news broadcasts from Israel and around the Middle East about the ceasefire, and both sides agreeing as air raid sirens were going off. So when we're talking about how fragile the ceasefire is, I'm not sure the firing ever ceased. So we really have to look at that, for one thing. And for 2, to trust that Iran is going to stick to anything that is put in front of them is just foolish. They have shown that they do not honor their word, that they do not trust or feel that they have to honor their word to us because we are the enemy. So to think that we're negotiating and to think that we're going to get an agreement that both sides or all sides are going to agree to is just, it's foolish. So in my opinion, to go in there means that you have to, one, have an exit strategy, and two, some specific tangibles to get accomplished. And unless you can do that, stopping it just means you're going to take a pause and start again.
All right, General Patterson.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of things going on, and you brought up the cyber attack. That's one element, but there's also a threat here as well. Just being in the cyber field, the secure, well, industrial controls, SCADA systems, or OTs or operational technology systems. These are big threat points for us as well. So there is a lot of things going on, and also when you look at the open border that we had, there's a lot of people in this country too. So there's some internal threats that we have to deal with. But I do think the U.S. is kind of pulling out. And when you talk about the ceasefire, is it really ceasing? There are still conflicts between Iran and Israel, right? That's a different element of it, which we have to be clear. The U.S. can pull out, but there's may still be war or tension or whatever in the region. I mean, I'll be 40 this year, and I've been hearing
Oh my
peace in the middle.
gosh.
I've been hearing peace in the Middle East my entire life. Now, I'm pretty sure that phrase didn't start, when I was born, and that may have been a phrase that's been going on for years and years. So this peace in the Middle East, it's a pipe dream. Maybe it'll never happen, but at this point, I think the U.S. is starting to pull out, and we'll see another conflict happening.
All right, guys, let's try to keep our comments a little brief. President Trump, as you know, came under sharp criticism or for rather crude remarks when he was threatening Iran on Easter Sunday. Trump told Iran, quote, "Open the effing strait, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell." Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, and other conservative influencers expressed discontent with Trump. Much of the criticism has been centered on Israel's influence on Trump's decision to go to war. Carlson telling ABC that Trump's threat was absolutely disgusting and evil. What do you think about this, Barry?
Well, I think Trump is desperate. I think, he is showing his desperation and his narcissism and reacting not only to the conservative criticism, but just his approval ratings in general are down to 36%. Nearly 2 out of every 3 Americans do not approve of him. And the concern I have with all of this is that while we were all looking the other way with all these distractions, Trump's State Department funneled $1.2 billion in foreign aid to Trump's so-called Board of Peace, which he appointed himself head for life. Republicans cried when Hunter Biden was paid a couple $100,000 for sitting on a corporate board in the Ukraine. But what's going on here makes that look like dust. And, Trump Jr. sits on a board for companies like Cashy that make money off bets on current events. This is a kleptocracy, and to bring it full circle, his crude language just reveals how deep the kleptocracy is.
Go ahead,
Richard?
Chris. Yeah.
Yeah, I was very saddened to hear that language on Easter Sunday, and I was very saddened to hear the White House strike back at the Pope for his comments, which I thought were appropriate. But these comments just show again that this man is unhinged and unfit for office. I do medical malpractice, and I was talking to one of my intracranial neurology experts recently, and I said, "What's the deal with Trump and cognitive function?" And he said, "The man has the 5 major symptoms of dementia." And I said, "Well, I'm doing this show. Give me the answer in layman's terms. Don't give me the medical terms." And this is what he said. He said he's erratic. He can't finish sentences. He's often confused, an illogical train of thought, and word finding difficulties. Those are the 5 classic clinical findings of dementia. And, you see those red marks on his hands. Some people believe that that's the effect of having to get IV infusions for the dementia medication called Liquemba. I wanted to write it down. That you get that every 2 weeks, and that's the only medicine that's out to try to curb the signs and symptoms of dementia, Liquemba. And sometimes one of the side effects of that is the very redness and bleeding on the hand that you see, and that's probably one of the few IV sites that they could access. So the man, in my opinion, is just showing us further why he's unfit for office.
Thank you, Dr. Kennedy. All right. What do you have to say about that, Jovani? Can't hear you.
I must have dementia then too, because those symptoms go for me. Good Lord. I think a lot of people try to prescribe things to Trump. And he's just being him. Like if you read anything about Trump, he's been the same way since the 80s, since he started writing books, Art of the Deal, doing marketing. If you watched what was the Apprentice, he's been the same way. So it's you don't have to like his remarks. Maybe it was a time zone thing. He wanted to get a message out to the people that were across seas. You don't have to like it. I wouldn't say I agree with the message on Easter. However, Joe Biden dedicated Easter Sunday to transgender, transgender kids or transitioning, flying in the face of God, playing God. So I don't consider this Trump's tweet worse than that by far.
Shannon, I saw you shaking your head. Why did you shake your head at what Jovani was saying?
I was in agreement. A lot of strange things have been done in the name of celebrating Easter, a religious time. These analogies, but it just seems like whoever's in power makes, the decision on what's good and what's not. And then when the next person does it, it's of course bad. So, someone was saying that when Hunter Biden was on a board and that was an issue and a problem, well, there's an argument to be made that the Bidens taught Trump how to do it, and he's just doing it better. Now,
no, Cohen taught Trump how to do it, and he's been doing it his entire life.
I'm just saying, since Biden's family did it first, perhaps they have taught the lesson and opened the door. Now, that being said, I think that there's a lot of stuff going on both here and there. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done with regards to the whole red marks on the hand and the dementia thing. A lot of those signs are things that are happening to folks after not getting a good night's sleep. So I think we all need to be careful of not being armchair physicians. And when I did a Google search while we were getting this dissertation, I found that those kind of marks can also be caused by skin conditions like dermatitis or psoriasis or small blood vessel leaks from strain, all sorts of things.
Feel like we're watching General Hospital.
No, I'm so sorry. No way. If you're questioning the opinion of a full professor from an Ivy League school by talking about not getting a good night's sleep, I just can't sit still with that.
No, did he see the patient, Chris, or did he just go and do just over the TV what he sees? Because isn't there a requirement to see the actual patient if you're given a clinical analysis? Isn't that a requirement?
Not only that.
Let Shannon finish.
Of the diagnosis is patient history, and he gave the patient history.
We're not in a courtroom. This is not the place for you to bully. I would appreciate.
I'm not bullying. I'm just correcting your statement that getting a bad night's sleep causes red blood vessels to collapse on the top of your hand.
That you're going to decide to take over.
Hey guys,
back up.
Chris, quiet. Chris. Shannon, wrap up your comment if you can.
All I was saying was that in medicine, so maybe in law, and you stick to that, but in medicine, there are different causes for things. There can be multiple reasons for the same thing. I'm not saying his friend wasn't correct in his analogy, but I'm saying there's more than one cause or reason.
All right.
Now, that is fact.
Chris, be brief with your comment. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, everybody's entitled to their opinion. And, after 35 years of doing medical malpractice, I think I know a little bit about medicine. But this is what I was told by a full professor of intracranial neurology at one of the leading Ivy League schools in the country. So you can take that for what it's worth. But the reality, though, is that if we can go back to what he said here, this is somebody who has lost both fringes of his base. The normal base that were forced to vote for him because they despised Kamala Harris, he's losing them. And then all these podcasters that helped got him elected on that other end of the fringe, he's losing them too. And he's not on the ballot this fall, which raises the question of how many seats are the Democrats going to control the House by? And is the Senate in play? Because I think it is in play. And I think that we could definitely have a blue wave this fall.
Fine. Go ahead, Barry. Final
Can I-
comment.
Yeah, final comment. With respect to the two presidents with their Easter messages, Easter's about Jesus. Jesus said, love thy neighbor, not just the straight neighbors, all your neighbors, the LGBTQ ones as well. Jesus said, love your enemy, not bomb the hell and curse them out of them. So I'll just leave it at that.
Jesus
As a
also
Jewish guy.
said, Jesus also said, sell your cloak and buy a
There you
sword.
go. There you go.
What do you say?
And
There you
blessed
go.
are the peacemakers.
Peacemakers.
Right.
Shannon, what,
Peacemakers.
That's
But,
what I said. Peacemakers.
yes, blessed are the peacemakers, but the part about sell your cloak and get a sword, and then the whole descriptive energy between when something happens, if the sun is risen or fallen on it. In other words, protecting yours is a viable thing to do, just not
and who did
guns.
and
So
who
if
did
we
Jesus
want
say
to-
this? Give the cloak and sword
Order,
was
Barry.
message against.
I'm
stop
sorry. I
interrupting.
thought
The ones
I
he
was
turned the
speaking.
tables over
What is
for?
it with bullying today? Gentlemen, did you have too much coffee this morning?
There was
Come
a
on
little
now.
too much bullying. I didn't like it, but it
That's
makes
not
for
true.
very good
Don't use that
television.
word,
Bonding.
Richard. Do not use that word, Richard. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
What word?
That's inappropriate word.
right. Bullying implies a threat, and we have said nothing threatening. We are trying to have a conversation here,
Oh,
so it's not fair.
Well,
it
you're
also
threatening the free speech.
Says the two lawyers.
free speech.
No, not at all.
The 40
Not at all.
In 42 years, we've had some great interactions on Square Off, which is why the show does well. And people love it when you guys argue with one another, when you step on each other. So I would say this was a great show. You all were terrific. I appreciate Howard letting me read the commercials. And thank you for joining us on Square Off. We're at squareoff.net. Thank you, Reverend Wright. Thank you, Jovani. Thank you, Barry, Gogel, and Chris Kennedy. And we will look forward to seeing you all next time when once again we square off. Goodbye, everybody.